Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we're going to return to the islands of Scotland. We're going to go to the Orkney Islands for this one, which is the first of the two sets of islands off of our north coast. We're going to go to Orkney Brewery and have a taste of a beer called Corncrake Ale. And this guy is a sort of blonde ale or golden ale, however you want to describe it. And it's actually quite cool because it's used to support a Scottish Society for Protection of Birds and RSPB, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds. It's used to protect one of the red listed species, and that's what the Corncrake is. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we get into the video though. But as is always the case with my beer reviews then, I'll take you through a very kind of brief history of the brewery, very short. If you do want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward a minute or two. The brewery website's in the description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews that I've done from these guys in the near future. And for those of you watching in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America, the English speaking countries, I know you can get this brewery on export over there, so keep an eye out for these beers. Whether you'll get this specific one, I don't know, but their beers are very good, so it's a good Scottish craft brewery for you to try anyway. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the Orkney Brewery, the brewery is currently owned by Norman Sinclair, who's an award-winning hotelier with various properties around Scotland. Norman was actually born in Orkney but moved to Fort William at a young age, and he worked in the family aluminium business. In 2006 he set up his new company called Sinclair Breweries Limited, which subsequently acquired two breweries, the Orkney Brewery and the Atlas Brewery. And the Orkney Brewery was founded in March 1988 by Roger White at the Old Schoolhouse in Sandwick, Orkney in Scotland. So the Atlas Brewery was founded in 2002 by Neil Cotton, and it was merged with the Orkney Brewery in 2004 under the name Highlands and Islands Breweries. And this came about due to the retiral of Roger White and the subsequent acquisition of shares by Atlas. So Neil Cotton actually went on to serve as the managing director of the Highlands and Islands Brewery for a period of time, and this drove a series of changes in the Orkney Brewery. But then the brewery was purchased, the whole company, the Atlas and the Orkney Brewery, was purchased by Sinclair Breweries in 2006, and the brewery are still based in the same Old Schoolhouse in Coyloo, just a mile or so from the very famous Skara Brae Neolithic site in Orkney. That's a very famous thing. It was only uncovered in 1850 due to a storm which kind of ripped up the ground, but it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and I think it's about 5,000 years old. And the Orkney Islands and the Shetland Islands are quite interesting in Scotland because they have a very kind of strong Norse heritage, if you like, and it's a very kind of distinct identity to be from the islands. Very beautiful part of Scotland, so definitely worth visiting if you do come to Scotland and see it. I need to go up there and see it myself, so fingers crossed I can do that at some point. But anyway, to tell you a little bit about the other beers you can get from these guys, their other bottled beers include the Northern Light, which is a pale ale, Red McGregor, which is a red ale, Raven Ale, which is a bitter beer, Dragon Head, which is a stout, and Skull Splitter, which is a strong ale. And then of course you've got this guy, which is a kind of special one. This is done for the RSPB, as I said, and they also have the Clootie Dumpling, which is their winter seasonal beer, and that's really nice. I've reviewed that one for you as well. But anyway, to actually tell you about this specific beer itself, this guy is a 4.1% golden ale. As I said, it's brewed for the RSPB Bird Fair, and it also helps fund conservation efforts for the corncrake, which is a bird that spends the summer on the west coast and the islands of Scotland. It also kind of lives in Ireland during the summer as well, in the sort of northern part and west coast of Ireland. To tell you a little bit about that bird, I actually got a bit of data from the RSPB. It says corncrakes are related to moorhens, coots and rails, but they differ from most members of the family in that they live on dry land. They're very sensitive, spending most of their time in hidden tall vegetation, their presence only being betrayed by a rasping call. In flight, their bright chestnut wings and trailing legs are unmistakable, and they are summer visitors and migrate to Africa for the winter. So this is why we get them in Scotland. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one. You can see the corncrake on the bottle there, so you can see the bird I've been talking about. I'll just put the light down so you can actually see it. That's a bit better. But as you can see, quite a nice looking bird actually. It tells you a little bit on the back about it as well. It says a donation from the sale of each bottle will go to support RSPB's corncrake conservation work in Scotland. So should be a very nice beer. As I said, a 4.1% golden ale or blonde ale. You can see Andrew Fulton's signature on the bottom there. He's the head brewer of the Orkney Brewery. He's a graduate of the Heriot Watt Brewing Programme, if I remember rightly. And there is the Orkney Brewery bottle cap, and you can see the symbol on the top of the bottle there. So without further ado, let's get on with the tasting of this beer. As you can see, a nice little smoky opening there, but we'll get this guy out and into the glass. You can smell a little bit of the bready notes and some of the kind of nice grassy hoppiness as you pour this guy, without even paying too much attention to it. But it looks a really nice beer. And as I said to you, this brewery are one of the best Scottish craft breweries in my opinion. Their beer is excellent. Particularly on cask, their beers are really nice when they have that sort of casky smoothness to them, if you like. So as you can see, it's poured a nice clear kind of pale golden straw. As you can see, if I put my fingers behind it, it is completely transparent. It's got a nice finger of a kind of frothy white head. It might be slightly off-white actually, but definitely a kind of frothy white head, a big finger of it, as you can see. It's quite clear, there's a good bit of carbonation, just a lot of little bubbles going up towards the bottom of the head there, and some bigger bubbles kind of sticking to the glass, but very attractive looking beer regardless. So anyway, in terms of the aroma, you've got a nice kind of hoppy, sort of grassy and citrusy aroma coming out of this guy. That's the first thing that's striking me about this one. The hops in this guy are a little bit pungent. You're getting a nice bit of grassy and aromatic-y character coming out of it. Some sort of lemony citrus in there as well. The typical elements you expect of a sort of blonde beer or a golden ale. And definitely some kind of aromaticity to it, a little bit of aromatic character. But if you swirl it up a little bit, and you get the deeper roots, the deeper parts of the nose, it's got a big kind of white bread and pale malt flavour to it. But there's some kind of sweet biscuity and caramel element to it as well. So in short, the aroma has all of the elements you expect of a kind of blonde ale or golden ale. So without further ado, let's try the Corncrake ale from Orkney Brewery in Scotland. Cheers! Now that's really nice actually. The malt, on the first taste, the malt is quite a bit more prominent than you would expect from the aroma. Yeah, you've got a nice kind of big, kind of pale malty bread base on this one if you like. It's quite nice. It's got a good bit, it's got a little bit of just a kind of cereal spice to it as well, which is quite interesting, but it's got a nice kind of pale bready malt flavour in this one that just kind of blankets the tongue there. You've got a little bit of just a kind of cereally spice that just on the very kind of back corners of the palate, if you like, you're getting just a little bit of that coming out with it. But there's some nice kind of caramel and biscuity sweetness there that kind of mixes in with that bready flavour on the tongue. It's quite mild actually, but it's kind of, it is definitely there. You can pick up just a little bit of that malty sweetness there, and it's a nice element to the malty character in the beer. Around the edges of the tongue though, you're definitely getting a little bit, you're getting quite a bit from the sort of grassy and the grassy and aromatic hops. You're getting a good little bit of dryness just around the edge of the tongue, and that lemony citrus is definitely there as well. You can pick up just a little bit of the kind of lemony juicy character. It just moves in a little oily bubble towards the front of the tongue, and that's where you're getting the sort of fruity flavours right at the front of the tongue there. But yeah, it's a really nice blend of flavours, this one. As I say, you've got all the typical elements that you expect of a kind of blonde ale. This guy's actually very well balanced. It's not too hop forward and it's not too malt forward. This guy is more a beer that has a very good blend of flavour. You've got just that nice balance between the malt and the hops in this one. You've got a nice little bit of bitter character, and you've also got the nice bit of sweet character, so it balances very, very well. If you like one that's a bit punchier in the malt or one that's a bit more forward with the hops, then this guy I would definitely say is more of a blend of flavour. In terms of the mouthfeel with this guy, it's definitely mid-bodied. As I always say with these beers, they all have this very, the typical characteristic of the Orkney Brewery beers is that they have this very kind of smooth carbonation to them. They're always kind of mid-bodied as well, and I think it works very well. They almost have this kind of cask ale feel to them. They almost feel as if they've been poured straight out the cask, and I really like that element with the beers. And even though they're bottle conditioned, it's not as if you are losing any flavour out of it. So they do that very well, and that's one thing I really like about the beers from this brewery. As I said, the kind of mouthfeel with this guy, you've got a nice little bit of dryness and bitterness. That goes into the aftertaste, where you're just getting a bit of the lingering sort of grassy and hop character, but the malt base with just that little bit of cereal element to it is kind of what's lingering into the aftertaste too. So you've got a good mix of the sort of sweetness from the malts and the dryness from the hops and the aftertaste too. So it's a very, very well balanced beer, and as I say, It's got all the elements you expect in the flavour of a golden ale, but it's more of a sort of balance, it's more of a sort of blended flavour rather than being punchier on the hops or punchier in the malt. And you know, all the beers that these guys do are very, very good, so if you do want to try one from the Orkney Brewery, you know, go for any of them. Pick the style you like and I'm pretty sure you won't be disappointed. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. It's been cool to revisit the Orkney Brewery after so long. I think it's been a year and a half or something like that since I actually drank one of their beers, so cool to go back to them. Their beer is still as good as I remember it being. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer below. Always interesting to hear those. Hope you've enjoyed this one, and like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff, and I will catch you soon with my next beer review. Cheers!